we?
6 feet.
6 feet.
Let me forget my glasses.
You can stagger, yeah. Okay. Everybody ready?
Sure.
Okay. Hi everybody, thank you for being here today. My name is Kate Snyder, and today we're here to talk about recent events, specifically the fact that Black Lives Matter. We're also here to talk about near-term council actions in response to questions and demands, and our intent to promote ongoing dialogue and engagement, and our willingness to respond to community conversations. Let me assure you, the Council's work is in service to Portland's citizens. Our work is public service. I want to take a moment up front to thank protest organizers Hamdia Ahmed and Ali. The majority of the City Council was able to attend Wednesday's afternoon protest here at City Hall. It was a time to listen and learn, particularly from Black youth whose voices were featured and who shared stories and experiences. It was a powerful experience for us all. I'm grateful to all who have both organized and attended protests in response to the killing of George Floyd and so many others before him. Let me be clear. We are outraged at the fact of yet another killing of an unarmed Black man, and we stand with all people of color for whom violence is an everyday threat in our country. Along with so many others, we call for quick and fair legal process to ensure accountability and justice. Along with my fellow councilors, I raise my voice in opposition to all acts of racial discrimination and vow to work together with our community, organizations, and all levels of government to fight racism. Before I get into near-term council actions in response to specific demands and requests, I'd like to respond to information that was shared in our community last night regarding our city manager, John Jennings, one of the council's 3 employees. Look, I've been on the job since December 2nd, and like many of you, maybe for some of the same and maybe for very different reasons, it's been the most intense 6 months of my life. Each day, I find myself grateful for the city manager's constant, especially these days, all day, everyday work, leadership and guidance for Portland. The city manager has my full support. John's background is grounded in work like the creation of Team Harmony, which was founded in 1994, a nationally recognized multicultural forum designed to unite youth of all backgrounds in the battle against prejudice, bigotry, and hatred, and to effect social justice for all people. As many of you know, the idea of Team Harmony was born from the friendship of late Boston Celtic captain Reggie Lewis and former Celtics assistant coach, our city manager, John Jennings. In Portland, the 9 members of the City Council set the policy direction for the city, and the city manager is charged with implementing and carrying out those policies, as well as managing day-to-day city operations. The city manager also has a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of Portland, and as such has a duty to get guidance and authorization from the council on how to allocate its budget in order to, among other things, carry out the various council-approved policy decisions. Let me take this opportunity to clarify positions, actions, and decision-making authority regarding a number of recent and not so recent policy decisions highlighted during the demonstrations and passed around on a flyer. Gentrification and homeless services. The council is committed to improving homeless services in Portland. Recently, and before my tenure, the City Council voted to replace the Oxford Street shelter and locate a new and more modern homeless services center with wraparound services provided on-site on Riverside Street. The city manager and city staff presented the council with a variety of options to consider throughout the lengthy public process leading to this decision. But the council ultimately decided to locate and provide the services as described in June 2019. Immigrants. The Portland Community Support Fund was established by the City Council to provide support to new asylum seekers and has been expended by the city manager according to guidelines established by and overseen by the City Council. Health services. The City Council approved proactively transitioning a portion of the services provided by the India Street Clinic to Greater Portland Health. Greater Portland Health is a thriving, federally qualified health center in our city. The transition allowed for funding of more comprehensive services for patients. The proactive transition of these services offered patients additional time to deal with this transition as opposed to what would happen if the city abruptly lost its federal grant. Providing these grant services at a federally qualified health center significantly increases the ability to continue receiving these funds. Free speech. The city unequivocally recognizes and deeply respects the public's rights and ability to state their opinions as well as to protest. The city has a strong commitment to always work with organizers. Additionally, the City Council has consistently allowed non-agenda public comment during its meetings and has always welcomed comments and opinions from the public in writing or otherwise on issues pending before them. Emergency housing. The city manager acted swiftly in getting emergency approval in a matter of days from the City Council last summer when the city welcomed an unprecedented number of families seeking asylum by opening up the Expo Center to house families. Working with partner organizations and neighboring communities to help permanently house them, help raise almost $1 million to provide assistance and ongoing support, and securing federal funds for reimbursement. While there were a few offers of temporary housing after the Expo was already in operation, the city staff worked hard to find more long-term housing solutions in order to minimize the amount of disruption to the families. And finally, school funding. The City Council convened an ad hoc committee to review available options before ultimately seeking approval from the voters of Portland for a $64 million bond in order to fund the rebuilding of 4 of the city's elementary schools. Ultimately, the school board chose not to seek available state school construction funds, and so the $64 million bond question was sent out to the voters for approval. I'd like to transition to next steps and council actions. The first thing I want to say is we hear you, and it is our job to respond to requests with action. Given the number of people killed by police in the U.S. each year and the disproportionate impact of police violence on people of color, we will be reviewing the policies and procedures of the Portland Police Department at our next Health and Human Services and Public Safety Committee this Tuesday, June 9th at 5:30. On Thursday, June 18th, the Finance Committee of the City Council will begin work on the FY21 budget. There has been a delay in the building of the FY21 budget because of the pandemic. If you look back to the May 14th agenda packet for the Finance Committee, you will see 1 month's worth of financial data and understand the need for postponement. When the City Council's Finance Committee begins its work on the FY21 budget starting on June 18th, that will include months worth of work, inclusive of department by department review and input by both the council and the public. On Monday, June 22nd, the full council will convene in a workshop to discuss the Portland Police Department's response to the recent protests. That agenda is forthcoming. And we are talking about bias training as part of the professional development and training for elected representatives. Let me be clear, this work is ongoing and it is responsive. I'd like to thank my colleagues for being here today, and I welcome them to offer their input. Councillor Thibodeau.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Spencer Thibodeau. I'm a city councilor for the West End, Parkside, Oakdale, and St. John Valley neighborhoods. I stand here today with my colleagues, as we did not more than 2 days ago, as a humbled public servant, as somebody who has strived to listen to the concerns of our community. Not many of us spoke at that rally that was here short days ago, but we came to listen. On a personal note, as one of a handful of African American elected officials in the state of Maine, this is deeply personal to me. When people talk about, and write to us and say, you should be angry, or you should do this, or you should do that, with all due respect, we all grieve in our own way. Some of us will pray, some of us will march and protest, and some of us will take steps to ensure changes at the systemic level. And that is what the mayor has outlined for you all today. Another reason we're here today is because of some falsehoods that were put out in a flyer to our residents. And I think it's really important in times like these that we are 100% clear on what our goals are. Our goals are to ensure that that 8 minutes and 46 seconds that occurred never happens again. Anywhere, period, full stop. And when I see flyers put out saying that our city manager is somehow perpetuating racism or attacks on the poor or the marginalized, it just doesn't speak to the man I have had a relationship with for 5 years. This is somebody who, when he arrived, wanted to create an Office of Economic Opportunity that not just helped our newest neighbors, but those who live on the margins, to make sure that they have the opportunity to succeed here. This is somebody who has, in the course of COVID, understood the impacts to our local businesses, and that includes people of color, and made it, done everything in his power to ensure that those businesses can continue. This is somebody who I was on the phone with earlier this week with organizers of the marches to try to get to the bottom of what the concerns were so that we can start making the changes that were just discussed. From my perspective, I've had the great honor and privilege of serving next to that person for the last 5 years. And that individual, Mr. Jennings, has my full confidence. What I also want to be clear about is where we go from here and how we go from here. We are long past the time to have the discussion in our community about what it means to be a person of color. When I was growing up, you have to believe that I was on almost every pamphlet. I was on almost every marketing material that was disseminated to the community. And that was because I was one of a handful of African Americans to graduate in my class. And so when we talk about what real change looks like, real change looks and starts with the people who are standing behind me and those who couldn't make it today, with the women that are serving on the council, with the immigrants that are serving on the council, with the African Americans who are serving on this council. I stand on the shoulders of people like Councillor Doosan, people like Representative Talbot, Representative Jerry Talbot, who is a member of our community. Those are the shoulders that I stand on. That's why I'm here today. And so what I ask us to do is to sit and give ourselves a moment. And when you speak, I want you to speak powerfully. I want you to speak unapologetically, because I believe you have that right. But I also want us to speak truthfully. We are all neighbors. We're not going to change this one of us at a time. We're going to change this by working together. And so what my commitment as one of only 9 councilors here is to continue that dialogue with our community and to represent my constituents to the best that I possibly can, and to help facilitate that dialogue as an African American male. This could have been me. This could have been any number of the residents of our community. And that's the perspective that I bring to this council and that I hope to bring to this conversation. So I thank you all for being here, and I believe I'm introducing Councillor Chong next. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thibodeau. My name is Tae Chung. I'm a city councilor for District 3. And louder. Okay. My name is Tae Chung. I'm City Councillor for District 3, and I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I've been working towards civil rights and social justice and equity for 25 years in Portland. I got started working with immigrant refugee kids in Kennedy Park. I helped to desegregate ESL systems in Portland. I also helped to integrate interpretation and translation standards in Portland and Maine so that immigrants had access to healthcare, access to legal systems, access to social services with proper interpreters that save their lives or enhance their lives. I've also worked as a civil rights trainer. I've worked with Equity Institute. I've been on the board of NAACP, LULAC, Asian American Heritage. Been on the school committee and pushed for ESL access and integration. And I'm here because that's been my life's work. And I've also been working towards people and finding equity for people in poverty. I've helped to create about 600 jobs for immigrants and refugees, mostly immigrants of color. I've helped to create businesses for people of color in Portland. And I've always been advocating for the importance of how much immigrants contribute to Maine's economy. And, you know, obviously we know that there's a fire going on, and I've known it for 25 years. And as a person of color, being in Maine is one of the whitest places in the entire country. I've witnessed and experienced my share of racism. And I've seen that since I was here since 7. And I've been fighting for that kind of justice ever since. And for me, fighting for that justice is doing the work. And I understand that this is a reminder that the work needs to continue. But that's why I ran for city council, and that's why I ran for school committee, because I want to do the work. And that's why I joined all kinds of organizations, including the executive board of the NAACP, so I could do the work. And I obviously am here to support Black Lives Matter and any kinds of inequities, whether it's racial or economic. But right now, the focus is on Black Lives Matter, and we need to make sure that everyone is safe, particularly our African American communities. And so, you know, when I saw that letter that basically pointing out that the systemic problem is a city manager, it doesn't make sense to me. Of all the work that I've done, to say that one single person is somehow enhancing or perpetuating the system says that I'm part of the system and so is everyone else that's here, because that city manager reports to us. To say that all of us, when we've been doing this life's work, to say that an employee is perpetuating the system doesn't make sense to what I've seen and what I've experienced. It doesn't mean I always agree with John Jennings, but that's part of the democratic process. I get to voice what I think should be policy, and we try to work it out as a city council. What I've seen John do is he helped me create the Office of Economic Opportunity, which helps all people of color in Portland by creating a systemic change. Hopefully this office will increase more jobs for low-income people, people of color. And they've also created this program called Natural Helpers, where they are trying to enhance more cultural connections through that program. He and I worked on that before I was on the council. He and I worked on all the different COVID business programs for people who did not qualify for federal business loans. And we wanted to focus on those businesses that didn't have the expertise to apply for the EIDL monies or the PPP programs. And we expanded that business loan program to almost $700,000, trying to target smaller businesses. We know that's going to affect women-owned businesses and immigrant refugee businesses. That's what I've seen John do. I've also seen John, the minute COVID-19 happened, he was worried about the economic impact that it would have on the low-income populations, and we waived all kinds of fees. As many fees as we could waive so that low-income people could get by through this pandemic. So I don't see that correlation or connection. It doesn't make sense to me that one person is somehow created this system when he's only been here for about 5 years, and it hasn't been my experience in my everyday work life with him. And so what we really need to do is think about what is the system and how can we improve. But we also got to look at where we are and where we've been. About 4 months ago, before COVID-19, Portland, Maine was considered one of the best places to live in America. We had one of the lowest unemployment rates. Half of our school is multicultural. We have a Latino superintendent and a Latino chair of the school committee. They set the policy, whether they want to create more integration, whether they want to create systemic change. We have that. We have an amazing opportunity to create equity because people in power on the school system can do that. We also have 9 of the 9 city councilors, 5 are of color. And many of us have devoted our lives to racial equity and social justice. Councillor Ali's been working for Seeds of Peace for almost 10 years. And City Councilor Jill Doosan has been a civil rights lawyer and an advocate for civil rights movements in Maine. So when 5 councilors of color in a city and a state that's one of the whitest in the nation, we are progressive. It does not mean that we are not satisfied with where we are, but we are willing to work and have been working towards that equity. And so our hope is that we can continue to work with the organizations and look at how we can improve. It's one thing to just point out where the fire is. It's another thing to get to work. In order to get to work, that means coming to our council meetings, it means registering to vote, and it means actually solving policy problems, not just pointing out policy problems. And so I ask you to work with us, and I think we are lucky that we have a competent city manager that can work with us, and we have a council that is willing to listen to each other. We may not always agree, but we actually work together and move and affect policy as quickly as we can. I can't imagine, and I can't be more proud of the council and the city manager and staff that was able to get us through this COVID-19 crisis almost better than any other community that I can think of. And that's why we continue, I believe, to live in one of the best places in the state of Maine and in the country. Thank you. Who am I supposed to introduce next? So next is Councillor Justin Costa.
Thank you, Councillor Chong, and thank you to everyone for being here. To my colleagues, I will try to be very brief. My name is Justin Costa. I am the City Councilor for District 4 and the only Hispanic member of the Portland City Council. We are here today because these are incredibly difficult and trying times for America and for our community. Every one of us understands that. Every one of us believes that. We're here today because all of us have stated unequivocally, and all of us believe with no hesitation, that Black Lives Matter, that systemic racism is real, and that these are issues that all of us need to address together as a community. For me, as someone that is not Black, this is a time to listen more than it is a time to speak. To hear the righteous anger that is erupting across our country. These are amazingly difficult times, and I think it is incumbent upon all of us to remind each other of the goodness that still exists in this community. And I will say, for me personally, I am so proud to be able to serve and to represent in a city where people care, where they turn out to protest the injustices that are affecting others, not just themselves. And that is something that I have seen over the last 12 years of service that I've given to Portland, time and again. It is inspiring to see so many thousands of people stand up for what they believe is right and to raise their voices when they feel that they are not being heard. It is inspiring to stand on these steps and watch young people come up, not just from Portland, but from communities throughout our state, because they believe that this is a place that will hear them and will listen to their voices. It is inspiring to be a part of a community like that. All of us are hurting right now. All of us feel pain. All of us try to deal with that in our own ways. But what we cannot do right now is use that pain and that hurt and that anger to turn on each other. This community is better than that. This community is far from perfect, but all of us in leadership here are committed to doing the work to try to make it better. We have been making it better for several years, but we still have a long way to go. We all know that. We all acknowledge that. And together, we all believe that we have the opportunity to make this a better, stronger community and to do everything that we can to make sure that people feel that their voices are heard. And that is why all of us are here today. That's all that I will say at this time, and I believe I'm going to turn it over to Councillor Mavadonis.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor. My name is Nick Mavadonis. I'm an at-large councillor, and I too will try to be brief. I have a few things I want to mention, and as Councillor Costa said, it's being a white councillor, although I have immigrant grandparents and great-grandparents from Greece and from Ireland who dealt with their own share of discrimination, but that was decades ago. So for me, as a white councillor, I look at this through a different lens, I know, than my colleagues. I've found this has been a week or so of reflection for me. I stood here Monday night and down by the police station for quite some time. Wednesday night, we were all here. I really want to commend the organizers on Wednesday night for inviting the council and asking us to really listen to young black people and the stories that they had to tell. I found it moving, I found it profound, and really helped me with my thinking. I fully support the Black Lives Matter movement and what they're doing here. I do want to also mention the flyer that I saw regarding the city manager. First of all, I fully support the city manager 100%. I think we've heard that from my colleagues. I think it's impressive that nearly all of the city council could get here on short notice on a Saturday. And I'm not going to get into the details of what was written on that flyer. I would say there's no attributions, so I'm not really sure who the actual authors are. The things listed I've seen before, frankly, often on a laundry list of our former mayor. So the items are not there with any attribution. However, as I said, I've seen the same list before. All of those items have been voted on by this council or prior councils, and those items were either unanimous or majority votes of the council. So if a former member of the council or members of the community did not agree with them, that is certainly fine. However, that's how our democratic system works, that it's a majority of the city council passes something, and that is the way we move forward. So as I said, I fully support the city manager. I think he's incredibly competent. And I look forward to the work, as the mayor began to outline, that we as a council can do, not only individually, but on behalf of our city and our whole community. So I will stop there because there are others who are going to speak following me who I think we will want to hear. So I'm going to turn now to Councillor Pius Ali.
Thank you, Councillor. My name is Pius Ali. I am at-large councillor. So a lot have been said by my colleagues, but I will want to touch on a few things. I first want to thank all the individuals who organized all the rallies the previous week. I've been able to attend some of them. I've also been able to talk to some of them on what is it that you want to see change. What I will say is, myself and my colleagues here are doing all we can to make the system work for everyone who lives in this city. As one councillor whose pathway to where I'm standing here today includes organizing those rallies in so many years in the past. I've only lived here 20 years, but I've organized a lot of those rallies. But this time around, I know, I understand it is different. It hurts. Everybody who looks like me, irrespective of whether they just arrived or they've been here for generations, is hurting. And we have all been going out to speak to say that this is not okay. We want to see a change. We want our people to stop being killed. I will say that the council hears you, and we are open to work with everybody out there who want to work with us to make sure that maybe Portland can be an example for the rest of the country to follow. I know one thing for sure. I know that we have started talking. On Tuesday, as the mayor said earlier, we are going to have a meeting with the chief of police at the Health and Human Service Committee, which I serve, with Councillor Chong and Councillor Ray, and we are going to look at the practices and the body camera and everything that anybody who is out there have emailed us. We're going to look into that on Tuesday. And I will ask everybody who is interested to look on the city's website. There is a link where you can participate in the meeting. If you don't feel comfortable giving feedback during the meeting, please send us an email and we will follow up and we will make sure that your voice is heard. I voted on some of the issues on the flyer, and a lot have been said, but I will say that if the way the city government is set up is not working for you, please get involved. Let's work and see how we can change it to make it work for you. In July, there's something on the ballot that will ask the residents of Portland to vote on whether they want to open the charter. If you think the way the setup is now is not working, knock on doors, make phone calls, and ask people to support it. And we will open the charter, and we will consider how does it look to create a government that works for the majority of people who live in Portland, or majority of people who get involved in the process. We are looking forward to engage anyone who want to talk to us on how we can work collectively as a city, as a community, to create a government that works for all. Thank you.
So I am Councillor Jill Doosan. I'm an at-large councillor in my 21st year as a councillor, and prior to that served on the school committee. I'm not going to repeat much of what my colleagues said. I think they have spoken and articulated the openness of the City Council as a body, the listening of the City Council as a body, and the commitment to come back out and commit to what we're going to do next week, hear feedback from that, and commit what we're going to do next month, and make this a continuous process to make sure we are always looking at policies, always improving. I too have had the opportunity to go to a couple of the demonstrations, and I have deep respect for the folks who are organizing those demonstrations and the fact that they're able to pull those off primarily, not politely, but with very little violence and damage to people physically. But the message is urgent. Stop killing black people. I don't know how you can say that nicely, and we're hearing it. We hear the urgency. And so the only thing I want to emphasize, because I think I bring a different perspective to it, is my reaction to sitting on a bench in Lincoln Park yesterday, sitting on a bench because I can't stand that long anymore. But they're listening, putting my role that people elected me to serve to action, listening. And I was very, when I heard the comments, the switch to get rid of John Jennings, it's like I don't get where it was coming from. And I'll say, I know it might seem confrontational, but for me, it was, I've not experienced a more clear example of co-opting the message of the leaders of this movement so far. There was nothing on page 2. So for those who did not see the flyer, Page 1 was a clear, unequivocal statement of what folks in the Black Lives Matter movement want nationally, statewide, and from this city council. The reverse side was a list of old issues on which the council has voted and aligning all of those to John Jennings. Well, I don't see myself as serving on a body where one employee of the city tells me what to do and what to think. I voted on all those issues. They're erroneous statements of what happened, and I won't use up time trying to correct them tonight. It's just important that I want us to focus on what the council is saying it's going to respond to do, and hear feedback around, is that you think we're off? You think we left something off the list? You think we should do something differently? And have that back and forth and figure out what we do as your representatives. The only thing, I want to thank my colleagues for what has been a real effort for me to respect the folks who have been organizing the demonstrations, to respectfully not jump to the microphone to explain to them why I'm Black too and I'm hurting too. No. The voice that we need to hear is from the folks who are out here on the street talking to us. And that's not been easy, to respect that voice and not grab the microphone. And I suppose what I was most offended by in the flyer was that there's nothing, not one word on there about police tactics, the second half of the flyer. There's not one word in that second half of the flyer about killing Black people. It co-opts the message. It detracts from the urgency of where people are on this issue. And I frankly, I don't get it. And there's not a process, an appropriate forum for this council to respond to that. And so we have our own forum to first make sure that folks hear and can react to what the council is saying it will do on Black Lives Matter issues. And secondly, to state our support and take responsibility for the decisions that this council has made, not allow them to be blamed on a single member of staff of this city. So Black Lives Matter. I'm a Black mama. I got a beautiful, very sizable chocolate son. And I have a gorgeous, actually I think my whole family is sizable. But, and my daughter is, we call her Afro-Rican because her dad is Puerto Rican. But this is, the whole conversation is personal in my household, as it has been in many households across this city and around the state. Black, white, Hispanic, every household in this city. The conversation is urgent, and we need to get up and figure out what we're going to do about it, and I am proud to be a part of this council that is doing just that.
Thank you, councilors. Thank you for being here. I also want to draw attention to the fact that the council's two other employees, Corporation Counsel Danielle West-Chuda is here with us today, and Kathy Jones, our city clerk, is here with us today. So I want to thank you both for taking time on a Saturday to be here with us. I'm happy to take questions. I'm happy to have other councilors take questions if anybody has any. But I want to wrap up by saying thank you for being here. We're sorry for the short notice. It seems like lately everything is short notice. And I hope the message has come through clearly that we're listening, that we care, that Black Lives Matter. So, are there any questions?
Where is John Jennings?
Well, I assume he's at home. We're responding to, one of the things that we're doing today is responding to the flyer that articulates certain decisions that were mostly council decisions, but attributed to him. So it felt appropriate for us to do that as his employer.
Part of the concern I seem to be seeing in the flyers of the large protests is that he's reporting to you and you are elected by the people. So there's a degree of separation there. Is there a structural way to address that relationship and perhaps to make the everyday person feel like they have more accountability in this community?
Well, I'm happy to let others answer, but I just will remind folks that it's not a unique circumstance. The school board is an elected representative board that hires the superintendent. So this model of an elected board, representative of the public, hiring staff is certainly not unique. But do anybody else want to?
Yeah, I would say, as the mayor pointed out, it is not unique at all, whether it's in a school board. The great majority, if you look at the research around the country, is a council manager form of government. A straight-up council manager form of government, where you have a president of the council or a mayor. We happen to now have an elected mayor, but that is the majority of communities throughout the country.
I won't be long. My direct answer is I am one of 9 people responsible for the decisions made by this council on behalf of the city, and I am directly responsible to the voters who elected me, and the voters can decide whether to re-elect me or not, elect someone else. That I don't see how the responsibility could be more direct. The manager is an employee of the council, and we do the regular performance review and all those things, but I am responsible, one of 9 people responsible for what this council does. And if my constituents are upset, in some cases feel directly wounded by something we've decided to do, they should beat me up. I'm responsible for John Jennings.
I don't have one of those elastic ones, so I have to untie it. I also think it's important to know that when you have a cooperative mayor, a mayor that's willing to work with everyone on the council, information is disseminated easily and quickly. And we're lucky that we have Kate Snyder that's willing to work with us. I can call her on a Saturday or a Sunday or any time, and she's willing to talk to all of us. Because 8 of us are part-time council members and 1 is full-time, and so having a mayor that is, cooperative, can facilitate, and can work with everyone makes government work. And so that's why, if you wanted someone to be there on a daily basis, that's why we have a mayor. And I want to thank Mayor Kate Snyder for all of her service so far. So.
Amen.
Okay. Other questions? Yes.
I'm here, so I honestly, the flyer thing, I have no idea. Like trying to piece it together as I listen, but so whatever the flyer address, right? It seems as if the people that were trying to communicate it didn't really understand like how to communicate what they were saying, so they placed blame on a specific person. And what it sounds like you're saying is blame kind of comes from all of you on that subject. So if the policy is something that needs to be changed, A, what is the policy? And then B, if it is something that needs to be changed, what are the steps that you guys are going to take to make sure that gets done?
Yeah, so exactly. Policy decisions are made by the City Council. And as many of my colleagues said, that's a result of all different kinds of work, committee work, constituent engagement, and council deliberation, and ultimately we land with a decision, and that is then the body's decision, even if it's not unanimous. The city manager is hired to implement the policies, and so run the day-to-day operations of the city. And so it's our opportunity as a body to oversee that work, to assess and evaluate the city manager. And I think that, I'll stop after this one last comment of mine, which is what we want to stay focused on right now is the demonstrations, the protests, and the message associated with the movement that is about the fact that Black Lives Matter. So as my colleague, Councillor Doosan said, when we get off track and we start to litigate an individual's performance, which may or may not even be accurate based on the fact that many of these decisions were council decisions, we want to get back on track and really talk about the message associated with the movement and the actions that your representative government will take in response now and ongoing to the demands, the requests, and the information that's being shared. Anybody else?
Can I just make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Not a question. I think one of the most amazing things that I've seen in this state and in the country is the painting of the street in Washington.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matters. And I wonder if there's a way that we can implement that happening, providing the facilities, the location, so that we can put a clear stamp on the city that that's the position that the city takes.
Thank you.
That's a possible doable thing.
Thank you. It's a great suggestion. Anybody want to comment?
Good suggestion. Any questions?
Yes. I think you'd be excellent.
I respect that question. I respect that question. It's a logical question. My answer from the heart is that you have to see the physical flyer to really see what it is that drove me crazy, drove me up off my bench. And it is that the issues and concerns and demands of the Black Lives Matter movement here in Portland and nationwide were listed on the front of the pamphlet. And we've heard them in other contexts, and we've been working internally to make sure we respond beyond, like, oh my goodness. I think one crazy response I've heard, from around the country was, Black Lives Matter and stop killing black people, only to have a local official respond, well, they didn't say it this way, but essentially by describing their own history, we're saying, oh, we haven't killed any black people lately, kind of, so like, you shouldn't be mad at me. So that we I think I'm pretty proud of this council. It's been all about, even though we think we have done a good bit of work, not because we're enlightened, woke people, but because there was a Department of Justice investigation of patterns and practices in Portland 15, 20, 20 years ago, and we were forced to, I didn't need to be forced, but anyway, the city had to review its policies and put things in place. And but to your point about responding, I endorse our response, which is, I'm not going to spend time telling you my history. What I'm going to do is show you what I need to do and show you that I understand that it's not a one-time thing, that I've got to be willing to go back, review, revise, improve, hear more data, go back, review, revise, improve. If I want to make real that we're not going to be a community where, I was about to say where black people feel at risk of harm, but there's no way I, as a black mother, will ever be able to communicate to my son he should not feel at risk, even if he's living in heaven. So the reverse side of the flyer starts off with John Jennings has to go, and list probably something like 10 or 11 different decisions made by the council before this situation, before this latest cyclical murder of a black man. And there's nothing on there about police tactics. There's nothing on there about how we interact with. But there's no accusation of incidents of over response, even though there have been some in this city. There's no reference back to a death that was in this city a number of years ago. It is purely policy issues that have been battled through this council in public meetings, and I can't describe it without falling into diverting the whole conversation to that stuff instead of focusing on the conversation about Black lives. And so I'll stop there. I feel like I'm rambling, but yeah.
Thank you.